Thank you, Brenda. Our electronic newsletter that went out this Wednesday included a blurb about this service. It said, "It's voting time again, and some of us may feel overwhelmed. How can we find the strength to pursue good in a system fond of injustice? This Sunday's 11 o'clock service will empower us to continue striving toward justice even if the fight seems lost." This idea arose from a discussion in the latest meeting of our Chalice team, the group that plans our services. I had thought about doing a series about world religions right now, but finding people to participate was taking longer than usual. Side note, as Unitarian Universalists, we have various other spiritual and religious backgrounds, experiences, practices, and beliefs. And if you would like to share yours with us, please talk with me or email me about possibly being interviewed in one of those services. But we're not to that series yet. Because the timeline for planning it was longer than I'd expected, I wasn't sure in that Chalice meeting, the Chalice team meeting, exactly what this service would be. And someone mentioned that we might want to do something related to voting. And I asked for ideas, and someone said, "against all odds," and I decided to go with that. Now, I'm not talking about the 1984 movie with that title. Against all odds is an idiom. According to the Farlex Dictionary of Idioms, the phrase means despite being very likely to fail. Examples: against all odds, he was able to survive being stranded in the wilderness for a week with no food. Everyone assumed that Robertson would win given his size, experience, and ability, yet against all odds, Ramirez defeated him in the final seconds of the match. Against all odds, the senator was able to work the legislation successfully through Congress. According to the McGraw-Hill Dictionary of American Idioms and Phrasal Verbs, the phrase means despite very low probability, in a most unlikely way. Against all odds, she managed to win the trophy. The American Heritage Dictionary of Idioms says the phrase means in spite of seeming very unlikely, as in against all odds, we had a snowstorm in early May, or against all odds, the slower team won. This transfer of a betting term to general usage happened around 1900. And the Farlex Partner Idioms Dictionary explains the phrase this way: in spite of great difficulties or problems, although it seemed impossible. Against all odds, this little-known man succeeded in becoming president. It's a romantic story of love surviving against all odds. For legal and ethical reasons, I am careful not to publicly support or oppose any political party while representing UUFF. But I think we can agree that our values and principles are not very popular in this state. If you are new here, you might or might not be aware of our UU principles, so here they are. These are our main commitments. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And it seems like we might soon add another principle that specifies a commitment to dismantling systemic injustice. A few weeks ago, I said that by living out our principles, we can become a microcosm of the world we want. Now it's time to vote for that world. It's good to think about how we live as a community in relation to each other and to the larger community around us. It's also good to think about how we can directly influence governments to create a society in line with our principles and values. But sometimes we might think our votes don't matter, like in the story. And sometimes we might get tired of pushing for what we think is right. Sometimes we might think the world we want is impossible. But a few weeks ago, I quoted Margaret Mead, who said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And so we persevere. And to aid that perseverance, we recently shared on Facebook an unbiased guide to Arkansas ballot issues, presenting different views on the issues. And the guide overviews 4 issues. The first one is a proposal to let state senators and representatives call special legislative sessions. A supporter of this says, if a governor is overstepping his or her bounds with executive action powers, then the ability for the state legislature to call itself into special session would be a stop point to an overzealous governor. And an opponent of the proposal says, Arkansas is one of only a few states where the legislature can override the governor's veto with a simple majority vote. This would continue the path to empowering the legislative branch at the expense of the executive branch. The governor is elected by the entire state. Legislators are elected by individual districts. The second issue is a proposal to require 60% voter approval for constitutional amendments and citizen proposed laws instead of just a simple majority. A supporter says it's a much needed safeguard for our initiative and constitutional amendment purposes. It is entirely too easy to amend our state constitution. We shouldn't amend our constitution in some sort of willy-nilly fashion. And an opponent says, acts by the General Assembly only require 50% approval, while initiated acts by the people would require 60%, making it more difficult for the people to pass an initiated act than the General Assembly. Let me skip to the fourth one, and then I'll present the third in a different way. The fourth issue is a proposal to authorize the possession, personal use, and consumption of cannabis by adults, to authorize the cultivation and sale of cannabis by licensed commercial facilities, and to provide for the regulation of those facilities. An opponent says the proposal is too favorable to the industry rather than to the patients and consumers. The proposal will kill the medical program because cultivators and dispensaries will not provide a wide variety of strains that can help ease patients' medical problems. Producers will be incentivized to cater to the recreational consumers and simply grow the strains that have the highest concentrations of THC, the main psychoactive compound in cannabis. And a supporter says, don't listen to the people saying we should vote no because the amendment isn't good enough. The Republicans in charge of the state will never allow an amendment that has things like amnesty for people already in jail for weed, home growing, or protection for workers who smoke. I would love to see these things happen, but I'm realistic enough to see it will never happen while Arkansas is controlled by our current lot of Republicans. Now the third issue. An amendment to the Arkansas Constitution to create the Arkansas Religious Freedom Amendment. Well, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? And to provide that government may never burden a person's freedom of religion except in the rare circumstance that the government demonstrates that application of the burden to the person is in furtherance of a compelling government interest and is the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling government interest. If that seemed a little bit confusing to you, it means, okay. This presents itself as protection of freedom of religion. That the government can't intervene and can't control my religious decisions. But this issue, Arkansas ballot issue 3, when we think about it, directly counters our first principle and our second principle and our sixth principle, because it's not about freedom of religion. One opponent says, nothing in the amendment explains what remedies are available when one person's or group's religious liberties adversely impact the rights and liberties of other groups or people. On the contrary, this amendment sets up the potential for abuse of other people by persons claiming free expression or free exercise of religion. In other words, it would make it legal to mistreat people in the name of religion. Another says the amendment does not permit the government to burden anyone's religious practice for any reason, which is extremely short-sighted in cases of public health, security, order, and the protection of other rights and liberties of people in society. Recently, I heard through the grapevine, actually one of you told me, that some people think that everyone here at UUFF is queer. And that's not true. We have several cisgender and heterosexual members. We do. We also have several members who are not cis-het. We have staff who are not cis-het. We frequently have board members who are not cis-het. That's because we welcome and accept people with various identities, cis-het included. And that wide welcome is deeply rooted in our principles. If the third ballot issue passes, some of us may have difficulty finding medical care, housing, and other needs, even car maintenance. Legally, apparently, I can't tell you how to vote, except to vote in accordance with your values. But when you vote, if you haven't already, I encourage you to think of us. Think of the people in this room whom this amendment would abuse. We all want a just world. We want a beloved community. But the path is hard. The work is tiring. And sometimes the goal seems impossible. UU Minister Israel Bafardi wrote, "The road that lies ahead of us is a long one, and the pace of progress will sometimes feel glacially slow. Never forget that glaciers over time can carve out Grand Canyons and Great Lakes. Moving tectonic plates can raise up mountains over millennia, or they can explode awe-inspiring volcanoes in milliseconds. Our commitment to love and justice can do the same." And UU Minister Daniel Gregoire wrote, "The question before each of us is, how shall I choose? If the power still lies in the hands and the will of people, we must let love guide us." Because again, a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Against all odds, may it be so.